Hey guys, Ryan Colley here. Sorry I got gnats flying all around me. Uh, it's summertime in eastern North Carolina and it's hot. It's starting to cool off a little for the day. It is currently down to 88 degrees. I think our high was up in the high 90s today. mid to high 90s. So I apologize for constantly swiping gnats away from my head. Constantly feeling like I got stuff flying around me and crawling on me, but because I do. It's just living out here in the country. That's how it is. So anyway, kind of inspired to make this video because I've been watching my brother Neal Colley. He's a retired police officer, just retired a couple weeks back, and he's got a video channel or a YouTube channel called Saponi Creek Outdoors. I'll throw a link to that so y'all can check out his stuff. He's mainly focused on like outdoor activities like hunting and fishing, stuff like that. But lately he's also tracking his fitness journey, because as he dealt with all the stress of trying to get ready to retire, which is a big change. 30 years in law enforcement, and going from that kind of lifestyle to retirement, I can imagine it's a huge shift. So, but I've watched some of his videos and kind of watching his journey as he's out there trying to take charge of his health. And move the camera over here because the sun's kind of I don't want to blind anybody. But anyway, just kind of watching him, and it just makes me think a lot about my own issues with weight and all of that. Like I said, I'm a Marine veteran. I spent 9 years in the Marine Corps. Marine Corps, we worked hard. We worked hard, played hard, and then, we're always out doing, between the running and exercising and then the working out there. I worked on airplanes. I worked on F-18 fighter jets. And between, our exercises, our dedicated, gym time and running time, and then actually working out there on the flight line in the heat. Most of the time it was heat. Sometimes it was cold, but usually it was heat. I really didn't have to worry too much about, and I was young, I really didn't have to worry too much about gaining weight. Not much. I did have to watch it because I've always had kind of a slower metabolism, so I've always had a tendency to gain, but the activity level was usually enough to mitigate that to some degree. And a lot of times if I found myself gaining and it was time for a weigh-in, I'd do like a crash diet, like do the sweat it out in the sauna, crash course. And, I didn't really learn about low carb until late in my career, but, which was effective, but very hard to do for me because I love bread and cereal and stuff like that. So anyway, the things that almost 5 minutes into this video, I haven't really got to the point, but I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about just the idea of of owning my own situation, owning my own problems, owning my current circumstances, and realizing that by and large, everything that I have in my life, good and bad, is to some degree a result of choices that I've made. Now, as a Christian, I'm a Christian also, and as a Christian, I do believe that all good things come from God ultimately. But I also understand that God gives us all abilities and talents, and he gives us, he gives us guidance and wisdom when we seek it out. He's always there waiting for us, but he doesn't push you to do anything. He doesn't force you to do anything, I should say. He's there waiting, and there are times when he'll intervene. But most of the time, he wants us to trust. He also always wants us to trust him, ultimately, and just trust him and give him the credit, give him the glory, as Christians like to say. Basically, to make sure that we understand that that without him, it's all it's all for nothing if he's not in it, Excuse me. But anyway, as I've been watching my brother, something has kind of gotten hold of me and made me start paying attention to my own choices. And I realized that most of my life I have slid through the cracks. I've gotten, like I said before, I've enjoyed a lot of blessings, but I've missed out on a lot of things too, because I have not committed myself to goals or made up plans for how to accomplish a thing. I haven't really, I don't really have a lot of experience doing that, which is, I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, because as a Marine, that was something that, the Marine Corps does teach a lot about goal setting and, expectations and things. But a lot of the things that the Marine Corps taught me, I really didn't learn until sometime after I left the Marine Corps. I got out of the Marine Corps, I'd spent 9 years in, and I got out in 2006. Within that first year, I had probably gained 20, 30 pounds. And part of the reason for that, the thing that I always blame, I had an accident about a year before I got out, where I injured my knee, and I injured my legs, both of my legs pretty bad, but mainly there was some lasting damage in one of my knees. And it made it painful to run. And so I ran as little as I had to do while I was in the Marines. And then when I got out, I remember trying to run one time and it hurt, so I stopped. And I just kind of gave up on all exercise. And I had an excuse, so, nobody could really tell me anything, because I had an excuse, had a bad knee, But really, the thing was, nobody was making me do it, so I just didn't do it. There was other things I could have done other than running. And there was a few times when I would try to go to the gym or something like that. But I'd go a few times and then I quit because I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a clear goal. I just, I knew I had gained weight and I wanted to lose weight. And so I went to the gym, and then I kind of got bored with it or whatever, got too busy. Other things happened that were kind of getting in the way. There was some kind of after work party or whatever. There's always a reason not to do something. And I don't think I ever consciously said, I'm choosing not to do the thing I need to do. It's never a conscious, if it ever gets to a point where it's conscious, then that'll get your attention. And that's kind of where I'm at now, is like, I'm realizing that a lot of the choices I made were my choice. It was my choice that led to where I was and where I am. So back to the beginning, I said, husband, father of 3, Marine veteran, all great things, right? But sorry, I heard something weird over there. I am back between 2 big fields and out in the country now, so you never know what you'll see out here. But all those things I said, they're all good things, but I got to tell you, I got to fill in the blanks. There's some blanks I left in there. So, 9-year veteran in the Marine Corps. When I joined the Marine Corps, before I joined the Marine Corps, I had to lose, I think it was around 30 pounds. And and so I did. I didn't have a clear path to do it. I was in my 20s. I was in my early 20s. In fact, I was 20. I joined and I actually turned 21 in boot camp. But in those months before I joined, my recruiter told me, I think I was like around 220, 230 pounds, somewhere around there. And my recruiter told me the Marine Corps has strict guidelines based on your height and your weight. If you're at a certain height, then your weight has to be a certain amount for them to even let you go to boot camp to start training, among some other things. So he told me for my height, my maximum weight that I could be to join the Marine Corps was 191 pounds. And so, hey, I've got a goal now. I've got a solid number that I've got to reach on the scale to be able to go to boot camp. And so I didn't know what I was doing. I was not an active kid. I was not an active teenager. I didn't play any sports. I didn't do any cross country running or track and, football, none of that stuff that a lot of kids my age at the time did. A lot of teenagers, that was kind of the thing to do. But I was Nintendo generation, so I kind of I didn't do those things. My brother did. He tried to push me to do active things like that, and I just had no interest in it. So why the Marine Corps? That's a whole nother story. I'll go into that in another video. But short story: the Marine Corps has a reputation of being the best, and so I wanted to be the best. And people told me, "Oh, you'll never make it." Well, that gave me motivation. to prove them wrong. So I had motivation and I had a goal. And so I did what I knew to do, and that was to get out there and run. Wasn't a good runner. I was never a fast runner, but it was a way to move and burn, sweat, burn off some fat. And I think I reported to Parris Island, South Carolina, the Marine Corps recruit training depot, the MCRD, Marine Corps recruit depot, South Carolina, Parris Island, South Carolina, was where I went. Marine Corps sends you to either South Carolina or San Diego. So, in South Carolina, it depends on where you live at when you join. I was living in South Carolina at the time, actually, so that makes sense. But anyway, I think I was 190 pounds when I went to Parris Island. So Parris Island, or I'm sorry, the requirements at the time, I don't know what they are now, but at the time, this was in the 90s. So you had a weight requirement and you had a physical fitness ability requirement. And it sounds really like simple looking back, but at the time you had to do a minimum of 2 pull-ups on a pull-up bar. You had to be able to run 1.5 miles in, I can't remember what the time requirement was for that, but you had to run 1.5 miles within, I believe it was 13.5 minutes. I think that's what's coming to mind. I'll have to verify all that, but 1.5 miles in 13.5 minutes, 2 pull-ups, and 80 sit-ups. At the time, they still did sit-ups. They actually transitioned to crunches while I was, I think it was right after I left boot camp, after I graduated. But anyway, I couldn't do 2 pull-ups. And so I actually ended up having to go to a remedial platoon. In the Marine Corps, we actually called it they call it the PCP, the Physical Conditioning Platoon, or what we called it was the Pork Chop Platoon. And I was at the Pork Chop Platoon for almost 2 months, trying to get myself to the point where I could do 2 pull-ups. But that's not even being honest. Honestly, I was just there. I did what they told me to do when they told me to do it, but I didn't do anything more than that. I think a part of me kind of hoped that at some point they would just tell me to just go back home because it was hard, But that's actually not how they do things in the Marine Corps, in boot camp, recruit training. They don't let you quit. And they actually told us, one of the drill instructors told us, they said there are 3 ways to get off Parris Island. They said 1 is to die. The second one is to get injured and to get sent home because you can't do the training anymore. And the third is to graduate. And he said the easiest by far is to graduate. And I thought it was just something they said, but I actually got, being in that platoon, I was actually able to, had opportunities to work with some people that were actually awaiting discharge. And some of them had been there 6, 7, 8 months and still awaiting aboard to make a decision whether they could go home. There were people that had gotten injured, most of them. And so they didn't just let you say, I think I'll give up and go home now. No, they didn't let you do that. Why am I saying all that? I do have a point. Discipline is huge in the Marine Corps. And then I'm sure in any branch of the military, but this is what I know. Discipline is huge. But what I didn't realize until much, much later was that the best discipline is self-discipline. And if you don't have self-discipline, you're just kind of slide through life, and good things might happen, bad things might happen, but it's like doggy paddling. Great for staying in one place, but not much good for swimming the English Channel. Eventually you might get there, but if you're going to take on that challenge, it's probably best if you learn how to swim and not just doggy paddle. So, in the Marine Corps, we actually had a phrase that I learned during my time in the pork chop platoon. In the Marine Corps, you have like marching, and marching we call it a drill, and there were different commands, and one of the commands was what they called mark time march. Mark time is when you're stepping. You're basically just walking in place. You're stepping left. You might even be calling cadence, but you're standing in one spot and you're stepping, but you're not going anywhere. And one day, one of the drill instructors actually said, as long as you're in this pork chop platoon, you're just marking time. You're not getting anywhere. There was a point where I finally realized what he was saying, and I started doing things on my own to get myself out of there and get into regular training. But in a lot of ways, I've been doing that in my everyday life. Again, going back to the beginning of the video, I was talking about different things, all these good things in my life. Marine Corps veteran. I'm proud of that. I'll be proud of that till the day I die. But along with some caveats to how I actually approached recruit training, and then I kind of did the same thing through the course of the rest of my career. 9 years in, the highest rank I ever achieved was sergeant, which is an E5. If I had really put forth the effort, I could have easily gone beyond that. And actually, I ended up losing that in the last few months I was in because of dumb decisions I made. Excuse me. So, it's just that's one example of how that lack of focus, lack of goals, lack of a plan can really rob you of a lot of things in life. But I could have easily done a lot more with my career if I'd made better choices. So fast forward to married. I've been married to my wife. We just celebrated let me think about it for a second. Let's see, we got married in 2008 and it's now 2025. And so, what is that, 17 years? Had to think about it, easy to lose count. Hope she doesn't watch this. But, 17 years, and we have a great a great marriage, a great relationship. But I was married before and ended up, we were together for a little over 3 years, I think, if I remember right. And I didn't have a plan or a goal of what I wanted our marriage to look like. And I made bad decisions that led to us getting divorced. Now, I'm not saying that, that everything would have been, all wine and roses and rainbows and butterflies, other than my bad choices. That's not how marriage works. But and maybe we weren't the best match, but ultimately, again, I'm owning my choices, and my choices specifically were what led to that split up. And with that, I burned down a marriage. I don't have a close relationship with my son. He's in his 20s now. And I always say I'd like to, I'd want to, but that, again, I haven't written out a plan to reach that goal. I haven't defined what that goal is. I want to be closer. That's great. What does that look like? So that's kind of the things that, I want to be closer to my son. I need to figure out what that means to me. And start communicating that to him, not just through my words, but also through my actions. Making those phone calls and those visits. I didn't for a long time because it was hard. Because I'd have to face my ex-wife, who was actually really understanding at this point. I mean, she's a great mom, and when we talk, she's been very very easy to talk to, not judgmental and things, which she would have every right to be with the way I was. So, but my marriage now, my wife now, we've been married for, 17 years. We've got 2 daughters who are both teenagers now. And, I've got a good relationship with them, I think. I mean, but as I'm thinking about all of this, I'm like, how could I make it better? What does it mean to be a good father? What does it mean to have a good relationship with them? And so, it's got me thinking about things I need to kind of lay out. What can I do to improve my relationship with my wife? Which we have a good relationship, but I believe, marriage is always worth doing everything you can to make it the best it can be. Again, that's a nice platitude. It's something easy to say, but my dad always says, putting legs to faith. It's good to believe something, but if you don't act on it, that belief is not really meaningful. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But I've got a good job. I've been in my job for 2014, so we're now 2025, so over 11 years I've been at my job. And I have made a habit of going in every day, doing a few things to pass the time, get to the end of the day, and come home. And I've not really got much to look back on and look and say, look what I accomplished today. But you know, I've worked enough to not get fired. To be honest, you know, just being, you know, completely honest on that. But there is a path for promotions, and I haven't touched it in several years. I started looking into it at one point a few years back, and then, you know, kind of just didn't go back to it. I kind of just got comfortable with kind of where I was at and never went back. And so that's something I need to do. I mean, there's already a path in place. I need to look at it, determine, hey, this is what I want, if it's what I want. And if it is, then, you know, it's a plan already there. I just need to figure out how to make it my plan and commit to it. And, you know, if not, maybe look for something else, you know. But see, that's the thing, is like, I saw a meme a few years back, and it stuck with me all this time. It was a great thing. It sounded really good at the time, but then I never really did anything with it. But it said, be all in or get out. And I'm kind of cleaning it up a little bit, but it said, be all in or get out. Because life is too short to be halfway. And it's not halfway, it's half, you know what, but life's too short to be halfway. And halfway is where I've spent a lot of my time. Is I'm not in, but I'm not out. I never officially determined to quit certain things, but I never committed myself to giving it my all. And I guess that's what I want to leave you with, is be all in or get out. Life's too short to be halfway. So anyway, this went a whole lot longer than I wanted it to. But hey, I hope somebody gets something out of this today. I'm hoping I get something out of it. And hey, just keep on tuning in and kind of watch my progress as I start to buckle down on some of this stuff. So thank y'all. Jesus loves you. Talk to you next time.